Kia ora and welcome to today's webinar from the Hutt Valley Chamber of Commerce. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I'm with Adam Jennings, who is Head of Business Partnerships at ACC. And Adam is going to talk to us today about the important topic of recovery at work. Now, Adam, I've seen some of the statistics recently from ACC. It doesn't paint a great picture. So really interested to hear your speech today on the topic of recovery at work. But let's start with you and your role at ACC. Tell us about what your role does and where you fit in.
Kia ora, Patrick, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here today to talk about recovery at work. So at ACC, what we do is we partner with businesses and industry bodies and the like to work out how we can activate the business community to really get better outcomes in the rehabilitation, injury prevention, and health and safety areas to get better outcomes for all of New Zealand.
Fantastic. Well, we're really looking forward to hearing your from you today and hearing your presentation. So let's get into it. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thanks. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today to talk about something that's really important to me and really important to all of us, which is recovery at work and how we support all of New Zealanders to really make sure they get really effective rehabilitation when they get injured. So first of all, I just really wanted to start off with, so what is recovery at work? What is this term that I'm referring to? The old advice used to be when someone was injured that we would tell them to stay at home and rest up until they were fully recovered. While this seemed like good advice at the time, many studies have found that this is actually counterproductive, with some people having slower recovery times and suffering from negative mental outcomes through being confined to the house for longer than necessary and having little or no contact with the workplace or having a regular routine. The impact on the employer is also significant when this occurs, as due to having time off with injuries results in often lost productivity and would often potentially impact the bottom line. So what has research actually told us? Why has this old adage changed? Well, research tells us that in many cases, it is actually beneficial for the injured person to stay connected with their workplace and to return to either part-time work or alternative duties as part of their recovery program. We're not saying about rushing someone back to work or making sure they're returning to work as quickly as physically possible. It's actually about what makes sense for the employee, making sure that you understand what's going to work for the overarching recovery, effective recovery throughout their recovery at work journey. What this presentation is going to contain is some useful and practical information for your business. As over the past 2 years, ACC has worked really closely alongside employers and health providers to enhance our recovery at work resources. And we've also launched our recovery at work campaign, which is called Teamwork Makes Recovery Work. And this was officially launched last year and applies equally to employees with work and non-work ACC claims. So why is it important? Well, first of all, we really want to look at what the impact of injury is. ACC receives around 2 million injury claims a year. And this is a significant number considering that we only have a population of about 5 million. Just think about that, 2 million claims for a population of 5 million. While ACC's ambition is that these injuries don't occur in the first place, we know that with our best efforts, injuries are still happening. So we need to make sure we're as effective in the rehabilitation space as possible. We know that people aren't defined by their injuries, but every injury can have a very real impact on a person's physical and mental well-being. And it can also impact their whānau, friends, and workmates. So being able to activate recovery at work and getting the best outcomes possible is going to be beneficial for everyone. So what does it matter as a whole? It is in the interest of employers and businesses to support an injured employee to recover at work if they're able to do so. If we just look at that number on the screen, in 2023, New Zealand businesses lost 18.5 million days of worker productivity to injury. Around 2/3 of these days were from injuries that occurred outside the workplace, but the impact to the business and lost productivity is the same. If we collectively reduce this figure by, say, 10%, it will return the equivalent of more than 5,000 working years to the New Zealand economy annually. Just think about that number there. That impact is huge. Can the New Zealand business community, can New Zealand as a whole really continue to operate with 18.5 million days of disruption a year? I really don't believe they can, and I believe that everyone here doesn't believe. So we need to do something about it to make a difference.
Yeah. Is the number of disruption days changing? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better, Adam? And what's the main reasons for for those changes.
Unfortunately, it's getting worse, Patrick,
Wow.
and it's sort of dramatically getting worse over the last few years. So the curve and the trend is increasing. So even more important why we need to focus in on it. It's a multifaceted reason for that increase. First and foremost, we've got just the effectiveness of recovery at work, the effectiveness of rehabilitation. We've got as we all know, we've got quite a constrained healthcare system and healthcare environment that's making it difficult for people to get the services they need and rehabilitate. There's also the focus on complexity as well. What we're also seeing is injuries and rehabilitation journeys are getting more complex, whether or not that will be the type of injuries or just the pathways of support someone needs to get back to being able to fully reintegrate into the workforce. So the impact of mental health, the impact of changing diagnoses such as concussion is making things more complex. And then when you throw into the mix comorbidities, makes things more difficult. So while macro impacts are huge, there's still a lot that can be done. There's still a lot of influenceable rehabilitation outcomes, and that's really where we want to focus in on how we can make the biggest difference with what we can control and what the employer, and those throughout the rehabilitation journey can work together to drive that. So that probably leads on to the whole concept of teamwork. How are we going to get recovery work to work? Teamwork is the core of our Teamwork Makes Recovery Work campaign. It is something we've been working on to bring employees, employers, and health providers together to support an injured employee. And everyone gains when an employee recovers. I'm just going to flick to a video here which really shows what that Teamwork Makes Recovery Work really means when it's fully activated.
Unfortunately, injuries can happen, and that may mean you'll need some time off work while you recover. But evidence shows getting back to it sooner and recovering at work has positive physical and mental health benefits. You won't be expected to do your usual job if you're not up to it, but you could take on some different mahi that suits your condition, or even train and mentor others. And when you are ready, studies show that recovering at work means you'll be much more likely to return to your old job than if you recovered at home. And because you're working, we can top up what your employer contributes, so you could earn up to 100% of your pre-injury income. On top of that, there's the positive physical and mental aspects of staying connected to your workplace. You'll get out and about, spend time with your mates, maybe make some new ones who like to chat, and have something to get out of bed for, which all contribute to a better recovery. It's also good for employers. They get you back sooner to keep up productivity and have your skills and knowledge around the place. And it's great for everyone else's morale to see an injured colleague get back to work. But you can't do it alone. You'll need some help from everyone. Doctors, physios, mates, whānau, and of course, the boss. So take some time to find out more and learn about your role on the team. Because teamwork makes recovery work.
Wow, what a great video. Really hadn't kind of got into my mind how many people there are around an individual that's been injured at work. And so, where would you go and find the information and resources to help you understand where you can tap into all of that help, really?
Yeah, so I think you touched on a really key point there. It's about that ecosystem of support. So ACC is one level of support. We have worked really hard across working with businesses, GPs, and injured employees to work out what sort of resources and tools can be supportive. So we've got those on our website, and ACC can provide those. But it's that ecosystem, activating the ecosystem, that's going to be really important. So working across the GPs and the health providers, understanding the needs of the community and whānau of supporting of the individual, but also really important of the role that the employer can play as well. Because as employers, you all have a vital role at your organisation in creating a culture of supporting your staff and ensuring that the right plans are in place so that recovery at work can really be generated and really can flow. What we've seen is some really great examples of businesses across New Zealand and really being able to make recovery at work come to life. And what we've seen is a few sort of key steps that are really important to make that work. The first is about creating that culture. It all starts with the culture. It all starts with the leadership to really understand the importance of what recovery at work looks like and what makes meaningful sense in the industry and in the employer business environment as well. It's also important to start conversations early. The early intervention, either it be from a connection perspective or from a rehabilitation perspective, is absolutely critical. The longer people take to really activate in their rehab journey, the longer it will take them to get the outcomes and for them to be able to effectively return and make a meaningful impact at work. Creating those recovery at work plans, absolutely vital as well. So working with the health providers and the employee to understand what a reintegration back into work would be, what sort of alternate journeys would work. And those are where some really strong tools ACC has to help activate those and show what good looks like. So really tapping into that is going to be really important. And a big part of it all is about staying connected. It is absolutely vital that you stay connected with your employee throughout their journey to make sure that they're either staying on track or that your plan can be adaptive to make sense for what they need as well. So a huge amount can be done while working with ACC, but through that ecosystem and activating that ecosystem.
Yeah, really important, isn't it? The whole role everybody plays in their recovery is super important.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about what sort of this ecosystem, what recovery at work looks like. A lot of it that we find is really understanding what is the why, what is the benefit of this, so people can understand that it's not just about getting people back into the workplace for the sake of getting people back in the workplace. What are the benefits to the employee? What's the benefits to the business? And what's the benefits to New Zealand as a whole? So there are significant benefits from an employee perspective. For the injured person, there are plenty of mental and physical well-being benefits just generally of making sure that they've got effective rehabilitation. It provides structure, purpose, routine, and keeps them in touch with what's happening with the business. There's also a financial aspect to it as well. If they have covered injury that makes them eligible for weekly compensation with ACC, they'll get up to 80% of their pre-injury income from a weekly compensation perspective. But if they're able to work some hours and some productive hours, then they're able to earn up to 100% of their pre-injury income. So they're actually financially better off being able to re-enter the workplace from a partial duties productivity perspective as well. And in our experience, many injured employees are keen to continue working, so it supports them in what they're looking to achieve as well. A majority of ACC clients have had a positive recovery at work experience if they're helped to return in a normal strength-based process that will boost their mental and physical health as well, which is amazing.
Wow.
And obviously there's a why for business as well. Why is it important for businesses to really engage in recovery at work? And that's what, the more we talk about it, the more benefit we're really seeing it. I think the conversations I was probably having with businesses a couple of years ago was you should focus on health and safety, you should focus on rehabilitation because it's the right thing to do. And that hasn't changed. It actually is the right thing to do. From a good employer perspective, from a good business perspective, it's absolutely the right thing to do. But it's also the right thing to do from a financial perspective, from a bottom line, from a productivity perspective. Effective rehabilitation and recovery at work means people are getting back to work in a meaningful way sooner, which increases productivity. But it also enables a culture where you're able to retain skills, expertise, and reduces the cost of replacement. So being able to actually enter into this from a business perspective makes absolute sense as well, and something we really want to activate as well. We want a thriving New Zealand, both from an employee perspective, but from a business perspective as well.
So there really is a kind of ROI really for a business to get behind this, get involved, support their employees, get them back to work. It really works. Is that what that's what you're saying, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, a huge ROI. The ROI will obviously differ depending on the industry, depending on the business. But if we go back to that earlier stat of the amount of lost productivity days, I don't think there's any businesses that could really say that they're not losing dollars, they're not losing business because of not having employees being back at work or productive at work. I know businesses put a lot of effort into both their health and safety and managing sick leave. Managing accidents and recovery, very similar to that. If people aren't turning up on Monday, you aren't able to charge those people out. You're going to have to get replacement work if you can find replacement sort of staff in often tight labour shortage markets as well. So absolutely there's an ROI. Yeah. So I really think that as a business, you should really understand what that ROI is, and very quickly you'll see why you should be engaged in this
and look,
for Hammer and Tom.
Just the way in which you're describing that and the benefits for the employee and their teammates of having that person back at work. are self-evident really. And so great to hear there's also an ROI for businesses as well. So great, fantastic.
So another thing that we've been doing as part of this recovery at work is we've started to be looking at industry trials. What we did find is that there was a huge amount of international evidence that showed the value of recovery at work, to showing that by intervening, by doing this properly, we're going to get material benefit through it. But there wasn't a huge amount in the sort of New Zealand sense. And while New Zealand is similar to everywhere else, there's also uniqueness about our industry, that our size, but also our culture and community as well. So what we really wanted to do was understand, is this going to make a meaningful difference in the New Zealand context as well? And we were fortunate enough to be able to partner with Transport in New Zealand and some of its members to really test those practices. So we looked at a pilot to go, okay, if we start putting in what is best recovery work practices, is it going to make a difference? And I'm really pleased to say that for those businesses that really do change their culture, that really do focus on what good recovery at work looks like, we saw material impacts. We're not that being reducing the number of weekly compensation days, so people were returning to work faster. We actually saw even a focus was reducing the amount of injuries altogether. So what we did see through these targeted pilots with this industry was a material saving. We're also looking at other industries and partnering with other industries to see whether or not there's any changes we need to make. But what I'm safe to say now is by doing this right, you're going to get better outcomes for your business.
Fantastic. I think we're going to play another video now, are we?
Yes. So what we'll just do is we'll just focus on another video, which is about activating a business to look at what really good recovery at work looks like in their scenario, in their high risk industry.
Oh, cool. Brilliant.
Southern Spars, we build carbon fibre spars for super yachts and race rigs. We do a lot of work for America's Cup and super yachts around the world. Southern Spars take health and safety very seriously, and as a business we're trying to make sure we're an industry leader in what we do. We look at it from an injured person's point of view. Those guys that you see once they return, you can just see their personalities change within a very short period of time.
Get back to work as soon as you can. You need to interact with people. If you keep to yourself in your room and your house and don't interact, I think you just get scared to come back and face the people that you used to see.
What we find with people coming back onto alternative duties is they recover a lot faster. The sooner you can get that person re-engaging, the better the result is. The guys need to know there's the company supporting them, and also they're getting support from ACC.
I was cutting some foam. I just removed my gloves to do some walking, and I thought, okay, it's just a quick cut, and then just the last cut I made, just nipped a piece of my thumb. It was not favourable, honestly.
Throughout the rugby season, I snapped my ligaments out of my ankle. I was like, oh, I can't walk. So I just went to a doctor, had x-rays, had MRIs.
A circular saw just kicked back, and unfortunately my finger got in the way.
I just went home the day of the cut after I came from the A&E, and then I came back to work the next day because I was given some work in the office.
All the important people in this company were phoning me and were texting me to make sure that I didn't worry about anything, and everything was covered. I didn't get straight back on and start ripping into things and doing stuff. I was within the same team, but I was doing jobs that weren't like, covering myself.
ACC's always been there for me. I couldn't walk for about 12 months. I came upstairs to do admin work. It was like 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 6 hours and full days, giving me the opportunity to see what it's like in an office environment that I've never known.
You didn't feel like I'm blocked away from the company. It was still part of the company in itself. My team just took more responsibility while I was back on the mend, but when you're in a position of leading the team, you can lead more than which you're working in that sense. So that's what I did, just to get myself back on my feet again.
It takes a collective effort. It has to be driven by multiple people for it to work. It's driven from senior management right down to team leaders, right down to the individual itself. There's layers of support that have to get that person to full recovered and on normal duties. And I think everyone can take pride in that.
It's just such a good place to work, you know, they care. They do care.
Well, what a great video. What a great example of, I think here in the Hutt Valley, for example, we have a lot of kind of high value manufacturers. Southern Spas are obviously a high value manufacturers. But it's great to see the way they're approaching that recovery at work program. Well, one question though was there was a young man in the video that had an injury outside of work. What should employers be doing to support those injuries outside of work, particularly from the education perspective or other perspectives?
Absolutely. I think it's really important, and the role the employer can play at non-work injury prevention is huge. The statistics show us 2 out of 3 injuries happen outside the workplace. And that means that irrespective of where that's occurring, they're not turning up to work and the impact that has on the business. I think New Zealand businesses are really strong at trying to be able to sort of foster a really strong risk appetite and health, safety and prevention appetite in the workplace. But when it comes to outside of the work, that I think sometimes employees either don't think about it, or because there's not as much structure in place, it has a huge impact. So the role the employer can play at explaining what that impact will be, what things they can take into account, so they are either having a HIM like we talk about at ACC, or just considering what risk and impact will have. The impact injury on Monday when someone snaps their Achilles playing rugby is their colleagues at work have to pick up the slack, or the impact it's going to have on them. So I think it's about going back to probably what the video says about just caring, showing from an employer to employee perspective that you care about them inside and outside of work, that they're safe, that they're looked after, and they're taking the right risks. Because it does, at the end of the day, has a material impact on business as well. So I think it's just about opening the mind and thinking about it's not just about the impact of injury for something that happens between 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, whatever hours people work. It's about anything that's going to stop that person from living a healthy and meaningful life.
Brilliant.
That's something an employer could play a role in.
That's such good advice. Yeah, brilliant.
And finally, people probably ask, and I alluded to before, that the tools that ACC has. This is a complex environment to work in. And I know as employers, you're always so busy. There's always so much process. There's always so many things you're looking to do. And it's easier to be able to provide some level of guidance of what good looks like. So we have developed a range of tools, and they were with employers, for employers, to help them really understand what good looks like, or what a starter for 10 could be, which then could be adapted to the workplace. So we've developed a guide for employers to give their employees about what to do if you're injured, as your employees play an active role in their own rehabilitation. This includes how to build recovery at work into businesses, conversation guides, as well as guides on managing their payments and understanding their medical certifications. We also know there's a big problem or a barrier at the moment around the access to health providers and medical certifications. We're working really closely with the GP practice and wider healthcare sector to understand how that can be more user-friendly, more employer-friendly, more recovery-friendly in the certification process. So it's not just increasing and a barrier to rehabilitation that not fit for work or not fit for selected duties. So we're working with GPs, but also the employer can play a role of working with GPs and health providers to really be proactive in what alternate duties look like as well. So I'd really like to encourage everyone to look around our website. Many businesses have already been using these resources and practical guides, and then utilising them as needed and adapting them to your business. Making them make sense, making them be usable is absolutely critical for the success when it comes to recovery at work. Ultimately, when a person does experience an injury, we want everyone involved in the recovery at work journey, and we want them to know their role and work together. Because recovery at work is good for business, it's good for the injured person, and it's also good for the workplace as well. So please think about what role you can all play and make a material difference in getting better recovery at work outcomes.
Fantastic, Adam. That's been both an eye-opening presentation. Some of the worrying statistics, some of those numbers are mind-boggling. But some of the ways in which employers can approach this work, some of the ways in which they can approach the team, the individual, the whānau, and all of the support networks that exist around somebody who's recovering at work. It's all there, and you've thought about this in a really great way. So thanks very much for coming and talking to us today. Thanks very much for the hard work that ACC do every day. We have a unique system in New Zealand that is lauded around the world, and we should be very proud of that, and we are. And it's great to be able to sit and chat about the real great work that you're doing today. So thank you very much indeed for coming in.
My pleasure.